The cafe fell silent as 5 men in tailored black suits walked through the door. Zara Mitchell's hands froze mid-wipe on the counter. She recognized the lead attorney immediately. His face had been on billboards downtown. He stopped in front of her, briefcase in hand, and said words that made her heart stop. "Ms. Mitchell, Leonard Grayson has passed away. You've been named in his will." The tray slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor. Around her, whispers erupted. She'd spent 2 years serving an old man coffee at table 7. She had no idea he'd been watching her the entire time. "Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story reaches. And if you want to find out what happens when Zara walks into that boardroom, hit that like button and stay with me until the very end." The morning shift at Cafe Aurora began the same way it had for the past 2 years. Zara Mitchell arrived at 5:30, half an hour before opening, her son's sleepy face still fresh in her mind. She'd kissed Eli's forehead in the dim light of their studio apartment, whispered a promise she'd be home by dinner, and left him with Mrs. Pacheco next door, a routine that had become sacred, necessary, and exhausting all at once. She tied her apron with practiced efficiency, the fabric worn soft at the edges. The cafe smelled of freshly ground coffee and cinnamon rolls warming in the oven. Outside, the Seattle streets were still dark, slick with early spring rain. Zara moved through the familiar choreography, flipping chairs off tables, checking the espresso machine, restocking napkins. She loved the quiet of these moments, before the rush, before the noise. By 6:15, the regulars started trickling in. There was Diane, the yoga instructor who ordered a turmeric latte and sat by the window. Then Marco, the UPS driver who downed 2 espressos standing up. And then there was table 7. Leonard Grayson. Zara glanced toward the corner booth and felt a pang of worry. The old man usually arrived by 6:30, rain or shine. He was particular about his routine: black coffee, wheat toast with butter, and the morning paper spread across the table. But today, the booth sat empty. "Maybe he's running late," muttered Jesse, the line cook, as he slid a plate of hash browns onto the pass. "Old guy's probably fine." But Zara wasn't convinced. Leonard had been coming to Cafe Aurora for as long as she'd worked there, and in all that time, he'd never once been late. She checked the clock. 6:45. Then 7. Her chest tightened. "I'm sure he's okay," said Angela, the shift manager breezing past with a tray of mugs. Maybe he finally decided to sleep in. Zara nodded, but she couldn't shake the unease. Leonard wasn't just another regular. Over the past 2 years, she'd come to care about him in a way that surprised her. He was quiet, unassuming, always polite. He never complained, never made a fuss, but Zara had noticed things others didn't. She noticed when his hand started shaking too much to hold his coffee cup steady. She'd started bringing him a mug with a thicker handle, setting it down gently without a word. She noticed when he struggled to cut his toast, his fingers stiff with arthritis. So she began cutting it for him in the kitchen, arranging the pieces neatly on his plate as if that's how it always came. He never asked her to do any of it, and she never made him feel like he needed to. "You're kind," he'd said once, his pale blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's rare." She'd brushed it off with a smile. "Just doing my job." But Leonard had shaken his head slowly. "No, you're doing more than that." Now staring at his empty booth, Zara felt a coldness settle over her. She told herself she was being dramatic. People got sick. People took days off. It didn't mean anything. But deep down, she knew. At 8:15, the door chimed, and Zara looked up instinctively, hoping to see Leonard's familiar gray coat. Instead, 5 men walked in, dressed in sharp black suits that didn't belong in a neighborhood cafe. They moved with purpose, scanning the room until their eyes landed on her. The lead man, tall, silver-haired, with a leather briefcase, approached the counter. "Zara Mitchell?" he asked. Her stomach dropped. "Yes?" He extended a hand. "My name is Gregory Halloran. I'm an attorney with Steinberg and Halloran. May we speak privately?" The cafe noise seemed to dim. Zara's pulse hammered in her ears. "Is this about Leonard?" Halloran's expression softened, and that's when she knew. I'm very sorry to inform you that Mr. Leonard Grayson passed away 2 nights ago. The words hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the counter, her breath catching. Around her, the cafe continued its morning hum, orders being called, steam hissing, silverware clattering, but it all felt distant, muffled. She couldn't finish the sentence. I understand this is difficult, Halloran continued gently, but Mr. Grayson left very specific instructions. You've been named in his will, and your presence is required at the reading this afternoon. Zara stared at him, uncomprehending. I don't understand. I served him coffee. Nevertheless, Halloran said, he made provisions for you. The reading is at 2 o'clock. Here's the address. He handed her a crisp business card embossed with gold lettering. She looked down at it, her hands trembling. The address was downtown, one of those towering glass buildings she'd only ever seen from the bus. Angela appeared at her side, eyes wide. Zara, what's going on? I don't know, Zara whispered. Halloran inclined his head respectfully. We'll see you this afternoon, Ms. Mitchell. Then he and the 4 other men turned and left as smoothly as they'd arrived. The cafe erupted in whispers the moment the door closed. Who were those guys? Jessie asked, leaning over the pass. Lawyers, Angela said, her voice hushed. Did someone die? Zara's vision blurred. She excused herself and slipped into the back hallway, pressing her forehead against the cool tile wall. Leonard was gone. The man who'd sat quietly at table 7 for 2 years, who'd smiled at her stories about Eli, who'd once slipped her a $50 tip with a note that said, for the boy's birthday. He was gone. And now she was supposed to sit in some corporate office and listen to a will being read. None of it made sense. By 1:30, Zara stood outside the sleek glass tower on 4th Avenue, feeling entirely out of place. She'd gone home to change, trading her cafe apron for the only professional outfit she owned, a simple black dress she'd worn to job interviews years ago. It was slightly too tight now and the hem was fraying, but it was the best she had. She stepped into the building's massive lobby, her sneakers squeaking on the polished marble floor. Everything gleamed, chrome, glass, expensive art on the walls. A receptionist directed her to the 42nd floor. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. When the doors opened, Gregory Halloran was waiting. Ms. Mitchell, right on time. He gestured down a hallway lined with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. This way, please. Zara followed, her heart pounding. They entered a large conference room dominated by a long mahogany table, and seated around it were people who looked like they belonged in a magazine spread, impeccably dressed, composed, powerful. At the head of the table sat a woman in her early 50s, blonde and severe, her posture radiating authority. Beside her was a younger man, mid-30s, with sharp features and cold eyes. A few other family members filled the remaining seats, all watching Zara with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disdain. Everyone, Halloran said, this is Zara Mitchell. The blonde woman's gaze raked over her, lingering on the frayed hem of her dress. The waitress, she said coolly. Zara's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. Yes. The woman didn't offer a hand. I'm Eleanor Grayson, Leonard's daughter. This is my son, Trevor. She gestured to the man beside her, who didn't bother to acknowledge Zara at all. Halloran gestured to an empty chair near the end of the table. Please, sit. Zara lowered herself into the seat, feeling every eye on her. She clasped her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. Halloran opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick document. We're here for the reading of Leonard Grayson's last will and testament. As you all know, Mr. Grayson was very deliberate in his estate planning. Let's begin. He cleared his throat and began reading the formal legal language. Whereas, and heretofore in various clauses, Zara barely understood. Then came the bequests. To my daughter, Eleanor Grayson, I leave the family estate in Bellevue, the art collection, and the trust fund established in 1998, currently valued at $8 million. Eleanor's expression didn't change, but Trevor smirked. To my grandson, Trevor Grayson, I leave the properties in Aspen and Napa, along with the investment portfolio managed by Whitmore Capital. More bequests followed, nieces, nephews, distant cousins, expensive gifts wrapped in legal terms. Zara sat quietly, wondering why she was even here. Maybe Leonard had left her a small token, a keepsake. That would be kind. She didn't expect anything more. Then Halloran paused. He looked directly at Zara. "And now," he said slowly, "we come to the second clause." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Halloran read, "To Zara Mitchell, waitress at Café Aurora, I leave the entirety of Grayson Hospitality Group, including all restaurant holdings, properties, operating assets, and associated business interests." The room exploded. "What?" Eleanor shot to her feet, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "That's impossible." Trevor's face went red. "This is a joke." Zara sat frozen, the words echoing in her mind but refusing to make sense. Grayson Hospitality Group. She didn't even know what that was. "This is outrageous," Eleanor slammed her hand on the table. "My father was clearly not in his right mind. This will is invalid." Halloran remained calm, his voice steady. "I assure you, Mrs. Grayson, the will is entirely valid. Your father was evaluated by 3 independent physicians in the months leading up to his death. He was of sound mind and body when these provisions were made." "She manipulated him," Trevor jabbed a finger toward Zara. "She's a nobody, a waitress. She conned an old man." Zara's throat tightened. "I didn't—" "Don't even speak," Eleanor hissed. "You have no right to be in this room." Halloran's voice cut through the chaos. "Ms. Mitchell has every right, and there's more." He reached into his briefcase and withdrew a sealed envelope. Leonard left a personal letter. He requested it be read aloud. Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. "Absolutely not." "It's part of the will," Halloran said firmly. He handed the envelope to Zara. "He wanted you to read it." Zara's hands shook as she took the envelope. Her name was written on the front in Leonard's careful, slanted handwriting. She broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The room went silent. She began to read, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dear Zara, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth while I was still here. The truth is, I wasn't just a retiree passing time in a cafe. I was Leonard Grayson, owner of Grayson Hospitality Group, a restaurant empire I built over 40 years. Zara's breath caught. She looked up, and Eleanor's face was white with fury. She continued, "For the last 2 years, I came to Café Aurora not because the coffee was good, but because I needed to see if kindness still existed in this world. My own family had become strangers to me, concerned only with money, status, and what they could take. I wanted to find someone who cared about people, not portfolios. And I found you. You never knew who I was, and that's exactly why I trusted you. You treated me with dignity when my hands shook. You cut my toast without making me feel small. You remembered my birthday. You asked about my health. You did all of this expecting nothing in return. I watched you, Zara. I saw how you stood up for the teenage dishwasher when a manager yelled at him. I saw you give your own lunch to a homeless woman outside. I saw you work double shifts and go home exhausted, but you still smiled at your son when you picked him up. That's why I'm leaving you my company. Not because you asked for it, but because you earned it." Zara's voice broke. Tears blurred the words on the page. "I've prepared everything you'll need. My CFO, Donna Park, will help you. The board has been instructed to cooperate, and I've left you evidence, recordings, documents, financial records that prove every word I've written. My family will fight you. They'll call you a fraud. They'll try to destroy you. Don't let them. You have more integrity in your little finger than they've ever had. Trust yourself. And remember, kindness is not weakness. It's power. With gratitude and respect, Leonard Grayson." Silence. Zara folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling. She could feel Eleanor's rage radiating across the table. Trevor stood abruptly. "This is insane. We'll contest this will. We'll drag you through every court in this state." Eleanor's voice was ice. "You have no idea what you've walked into, girl." But Halloran was already gathering his documents. The will is ironclad. Mr. Grayson anticipated challenges and took every precaution. Any attempt to contest will result in the forfeiture of your own bequests, as outlined in Section 12. Eleanor's eyes blazed, but she said nothing. Halloran turned to Zara. Ms. Mitchell, I'll need you to come to our office tomorrow morning to begin the transition process. You're now the sole owner of a company with 63 restaurant locations across 4 states. Zara couldn't breathe. 63 restaurants. She'd never even managed one. That night, Zara sat on the edge of her bed in the tiny apartment she shared with Eli, staring at the letter in her hands. Her son was asleep in the next room, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. He had no idea that their entire world had just shifted. She read Leonard's words again. Kindness is not weakness, it's power. But sitting here, alone in the dark, she didn't feel powerful. She felt terrified. She thought of Eleanor's cold eyes, Trevor's threats, the weight of an empire she didn't understand. And she thought of Leonard, quiet, kind Leonard, sitting at table 7, watching her, believing in her. Zara folded the letter and placed it carefully on her nightstand. Then she lay back and stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Tomorrow, everything would change. She just had to be brave enough to face it. The next morning, Zara walked into the offices of Steinberg and Halloran with Eli's hand in hers. She couldn't afford childcare on such short notice, and Mrs. Pacheco had a doctor's appointment. So Eli came along, clutching his worn, stuffed elephant and looking around with wide eyes. The receptionist eyed them both with barely concealed surprise, but Halloran appeared moments later, smiling warmly. Ms. Mitchell, and who's this? My son, Eli, Zara said quietly. I'm sorry, I didn't have anyone to… No apologies necessary, Halloran said kindly. He crouched down to Eli's level. We have a great break room with snacks. How do you feel about chocolate milk? Eli nodded enthusiastically. Halloran led them to a private office where a woman in her 40s was waiting, Asian, composed, with sharp, intelligent eyes. She stood and extended her hand. Zara Mitchell, she said. I'm Dana Park. I was Leonard's CFO. Zara shook her hand, grateful for the warmth in Dana's voice. Nice to meet you, Dana gestured to the chair across from her. Leonard told me about you. He said you were the only person he trusted. She paused. He was right to trust you. I don't know anything about running a company, Zara admitted. You don't have to, Dana said. That's what I'm here for. Leonard built something incredible, but it's been compromised. His family has been siphoning money, manipulating reports, undermining operations. He knew it. That's why he chose you. Zara felt a chill. They're going to come after me. Yes, Dana said bluntly, but we're ready. Over the next 2 hours, Dana walked Zara through the basics: company structure, revenue streams, key personnel. It was overwhelming, but Dana was patient, breaking everything down into manageable pieces. And then she showed Zara the evidence. Leonard had been meticulous. For months before his death, he'd documented every suspicious transaction, every manipulated report, every backroom deal his family had made. There were recordings, emails, financial audits. All of it pointed to a coordinated effort to drain the company's resources. They thought he was too old to notice, Dana said quietly. But Leonard noticed everything. Zara stared at the files, her heart pounding. What do I do with this? Dana met her eyes. You fight. The first board meeting was scheduled for the following week. Zara spent every spare moment preparing, studying reports late into the night while Eli slept. Dana coached her, walking her through every detail, every potential question. They're going to try to intimidate you, Dana warned. They'll talk over you, dismiss you, make you feel small. Don't let them. Zara nodded, but her stomach twisted with anxiety. The day of the meeting arrived. Zara stood outside the boardroom on the 48th floor of the Grayson Hospitality headquarters, smoothing down her dress. It was new, purchased with money she didn't really have, but Dana insisted she needed to look the part. You ready? Dana asked beside her. Zara took a deep breath. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Dana smiled. That's all that matters. They walked in together. The room was massive, dominated by a glass table that reflected the Seattle skyline. Around it sat a dozen men and women in expensive suits, board members, investors, executives. And at the far end sat Eleanor and Trevor, their expressions smug. Every eye turned to Zara as she entered. Trevor leaned back in his chair, smirking. Well, well. The waitress has arrived. Eleanor's voice was cold. Let's get this over with. The board chairman, an older man named Richard Aldridge, gestured to an empty seat. Ms. Mitchell, please. Zara sat, Dana beside her. She felt every gaze on her, judging, doubting. Richard cleared his throat. We're here to discuss the transition of ownership following Leonard Grayson's passing. As you're all aware, Ms. Mitchell has inherited controlling interest in the company. One of the board members, a man in his 60s with a sharp suit, spoke up. With all due respect, Ms. Mitchell has no experience in corporate management. This company requires leadership, not sentimentality. Trevor nodded. Exactly. My grandfather clearly wasn't thinking straight. We need someone competent. Zara's hands clenched under the table. Dana leaned forward. Leonard Grayson was evaluated and deemed fully competent. The will stands. Then perhaps Miss Mitchell should sell, Eleanor said smoothly. We're prepared to make a generous offer. She walks away with enough money to live comfortably, and the company remains in capable hands. The room murmured in agreement. Richard looked at Zara. That's certainly an option worth considering. Zara's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to take the offer, to walk away from this world that didn't want her, to take the money and give Eli the life he deserved. But then she thought of Leonard's letter. Kindness is not weakness, it's power. She lifted her chin. No, she said quietly. The room went still. Excuse me? Eleanor's voice was sharp. Zara looked her in the eye. I'm not selling. Leonard trusted me with this company, and I'm going to honor that. Trevor laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. You're going to honor it? You don't even know what half the departments do. Then I'll learn, Zara said steadily. This is absurd, one of the board members muttered, but Richard raised a hand. Ms. Mitchell has the legal right to retain ownership. If she chooses to do so, we'll proceed accordingly. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Then I propose a vote, a motion of no confidence. If the board agrees that Ms. Mitchell is unfit to lead, we can petition for a court-appointed manager. The room erupted in murmurs. Dana stood. That's premature. Ms. Mitchell hasn't even had a chance to be— She's had plenty of chances, Trevor interrupted, and she's proven she's in over her head. Zara felt the walls closing in. This was exactly what Dana had warned her about. But then, from across the table, a quiet voice spoke up. I disagree. Everyone turned. It was a younger board member, a woman in her 30s named Claire Whitman. Leonard Grayson built this company from nothing. He knew exactly what he was doing when he made this decision. I think we owe it to him and to Ms. Mitchell to give her a fair chance. Richard nodded slowly. Noted. But the motion stands. All in favor of a no-confidence vote? Hands began to rise. Zara's stomach sank. But Dana wasn't finished. Before you vote, she said calmly, I think the board should be aware of certain financial irregularities that have come to light. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Dana opened a folder and slid documents across the table. Over the past 18 months, several accounts have been systematically drained. Shell companies were created, expenses inflated, profits redirected. Leonard documented everything. The board members leaned forward, scanning the pages. Trevor's face went pale. Eleanor's voice was venomous. This is slander. It's evidence, Dana said, and it points directly to members of the Grayson family. The room exploded. Richard slammed his hand on the table. Enough! This meeting is adjourned. We'll reconvene once these allegations have been reviewed. Eleanor stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. She looked at Zara, her eyes blazing with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've just done, she hissed. Then she swept out of the room, Trevor following. Zara sat frozen, her heart racing. Dana placed a hand on her shoulder. You did good. But as Zara watched the board members file out, whispering among themselves, she didn't feel victorious. She felt like she'd just started a war, and she had no idea if she could win. The silence in the boardroom lingered long after Eleanor and Trevor had stormed out. Zara sat motionless, her hand still gripping the edge of the table as if letting go might send her tumbling into an abyss she couldn't climb out of. Around her, the remaining board members gathered their documents with uncomfortable efficiency, their whispers sharp and cutting. Dana leaned close, her voice low. "Don't let them see you shake." Zara forced herself to release the table. "I'm not shaking." "Yes, you are," Dana said gently. "But that's okay, just not in front of them." Richard Aldridge, the board chairman, approached with measured steps. His expression was carefully neutral, the kind of face that had been honed over decades of corporate maneuvering. "Ms. Mitchell, I suggest you take the rest of the day to collect yourself. We'll schedule a follow-up meeting once the audit committee has reviewed the documents Ms. Park provided." Zara stood, willing her legs to hold steady. "How long will that take?" "A week, perhaps 2. Richard's gaze flickered to Dana. "In the meantime, I'd advise you to be very careful. The Graysons don't take kindly to being cornered." "Is that a warning or a threat?" Zara asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Richard's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Consider it professional advice." He nodded curtly and left. Dana gathered her files, moving with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd navigated corporate battlefields before. "Come on, let's get out of here before anyone else decides to corner you." They collected Eli from the break room, where he'd been happily coloring with one of the administrative assistants. His face lit up when he saw Zara, and he ran to her, clutching a drawing of what appeared to be a rocket ship. "Mommy, look! Sarah helped me draw this!" Zara crouched down, pulling him into a tight hug. His small warmth anchored her, reminded her why she was doing this. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Sarah, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled. "He's a great kid. Well-behaved, too." "Thank you for watching him," Zara said, meaning it. As they rode the elevator down, Eli chattered about rockets and outer space, oblivious to the storm gathering around them. Dana watched Zara carefully. "You need to eat something," Dana said, "and then we need to talk strategy." "I need to pick up groceries and get Eli home for his nap," Zara countered. "Zara." "I know." Zara's voice was tired. "But I'm still his mom, and he still needs routines." Dana softened. "Okay. But tonight, after he's asleep, we talk. There are things you need to know before the Graysons make their next move." Zara nodded, exhaustion pulling at her bones. They parted ways in the parking garage, and Zara strapped Eli into his car seat, a second-hand model she'd bought 3 years ago that still worked perfectly fine. As she drove through the city, past gleaming office towers and expensive boutiques, she felt the surreal weight of what had just happened. She owned a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and she still drove a 12-year-old Honda with a dented rear bumper. The disconnect was dizzying. At the grocery store, Zara moved through the aisles on autopilot, comparing prices and clipping coupons from her phone. Old habits died hard. Eli skipped beside her, asking if they could get the cereal with the cartoon character on the box. "The store brand tastes the same," Zara said gently, "but the astronaut—" "Next time, baby. I promise." She felt a pang of guilt. Technically, she could afford the name brand cereal now. She could afford 1,000 boxes of it. But the money wasn't real yet. It was numbers on documents she didn't fully understand, tangled up in legal processes and corporate structures. Until it actually landed in her account, until she could see it and touch it, she couldn't bring herself to spend it. Besides, there was a part of her that worried it might all disappear, that someone would discover a loophole, a mistake, and everything Leonard had given her would vanish like smoke. At the checkout, the cashier, a woman around Zara's age with tired eyes, smiled at Eli. "He's adorable." "Thank you," Zara said, handing over her card. "You work at Café Aurora, right? I've seen you there." Zara blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I did. I'm taking some time off." "Lucky you," the woman said wistfully. "I've been pulling doubles for 3 months straight." Zara thought of the empire she'd just inherited, the restaurant spanning 4 states, the employees whose livelihoods now rested on her shoulders. "I hope things get easier for you." The woman laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, me too." As Zara loaded groceries into her car, Eli already half asleep in his seat, she thought about that cashier. about all the people working double shifts, cutting coupons, choosing store-brand cereal because every dollar mattered. She'd been one of them a week ago. She still was, in every way that counted. And maybe that was exactly why Leonard had chosen her. That evening, after Eli was tucked into bed, Zara sat at her tiny kitchen table with her laptop open. Dana had sent over files, dozens of them, marked urgent. Financial reports, organizational charts, personnel files. Zara clicked through them, trying to absorb the sheer scale of what she'd inherited. Grayson Hospitality Group operated 63 restaurants across Washington, Oregon, California, and Nevada. The brands ranged from upscale steakhouses to family diners, each with its own identity but all under the same corporate umbrella. The company employed over 2,000 people. Annual revenue exceeded $300 million. Zara's head spun. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dana. "Still awake?" Zara typed back. "Trying to make sense of these reports. Don't try to understand everything tonight. We'll go through it together tomorrow. But there's something else you need to see. Check your email." Zara refreshed her inbox. A new message from Dana. Subject line, "Confidential." Leonard's files. She clicked it open. Inside was a video file. Her hand hovered over the trackpad. Then she pressed play. Leonard's face filled the screen. He looked older than she remembered, thinner, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He sat in what appeared to be a study, leather-bound books lining the shelves behind him. "Hello, Zara," he said, his voice warm but weary. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've accepted the responsibility I've placed on you. I'm sorry for the burden, but I'm not sorry for choosing you." Zara's throat tightened. Leonard leaned forward slightly. "I want to tell you something I never had the courage to say in person. 30 years ago, I built this company with my own hands. I started with a single diner in Tacoma, working 18-hour days, barely scraping by. I believed in something simple, that good food and genuine hospitality could create something meaningful. And it worked. The business grew. I opened more locations, made more money than I ever imagined." He paused, his expression darkening. "But somewhere along the way, my family stopped seeing the restaurants as places that served people. They started seeing them as assets to be exploited. My daughter Eleanor married a venture capitalist who taught her to value profit over everything else. My grandson Trevor learned to see employees as expenses to be minimized. They pushed me to cut corners, reduce staff, raise prices. They wanted to squeeze every dollar out of the business, regardless of the cost to the people who worked there." Leonard's voice grew heavy. "I resisted. But I'm old, Zara, and I was tired, so I stepped back. Let them take over day-to-day operations. I thought maybe I was just out of touch, that the world had changed, and I needed to accept it." He looked directly into the camera, and Zara felt as if he were sitting across from her. "But then I met you, and I realized I wasn't out of touch. I was just surrounded by the wrong people." Zara's eyes burned. "You reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Because I wanted to create spaces where people felt valued, where employees were treated with dignity, where a meal wasn't just a transaction, but a moment of connection. You did all of that without even trying. It was just who you were." Leonard's hands folded in his lap. "So I made a plan. I documented everything, every unethical decision, every financial manipulation, every corner they cut. I prepared evidence that would protect you when they inevitably tried to take the company back. And I made sure you'd have allies. Dana Park is one of the most capable executives I've ever worked with, and she believes in the same things we do. Trust her." He smiled, sad but genuine. "I know you're scared. I know this feels impossible, but you're stronger than you realize, Zara. You've been fighting your whole life, for your son, for your dignity, for a better future. This is just another fight, and I believe you can win it." The video ended. Zara sat in the dim kitchen, tears streaming down her face. She replayed the video twice more, absorbing every word, every inflection. Leonard had seen something in her she wasn't sure she saw in herself, but he'd believed it enough to stake his entire legacy on it. She couldn't let him down. The next morning, Zara woke with a clarity she hadn't felt in days. She dressed carefully, another new outfit Dana had insisted she buy, and dropped Eli off with Mrs. Pacheco, who beamed at the little boy. You look professional, Mrs. Pacheco said approvingly. Like a boss. Zara managed a smile, trying to feel like one. At the Grayson Hospitality headquarters, Dana met her in the lobby. Ready? As I'll ever be. They rode the elevator to the executive floor. Dana had arranged for Zara to have Leonard's old office, a corner space with sweeping views of Elliott Bay. Zara stood in the doorway, taking it in. The desk was massive, the furniture elegant but understated. Bookshelves lined one wall filled with industry journals and personal mementos. He wanted you to have this space, Dana said quietly. He had it cleaned out before he passed. Everything here is for you. Zara stepped inside, her fingers trailing along the desk. It felt sacred somehow, like stepping into a legacy she hadn't earned. You earned it, Dana said, as if reading her mind. Now let's make sure you keep it. They spent the morning reviewing financials. Dana walked Zara through the company's revenue streams, breaking down which locations were thriving and which were struggling. Several restaurants in California were underperforming, largely due to mismanagement. Eleanor put her own people in charge, Dana explained, managers who prioritized cutting costs over quality. Staff turnover skyrocketed, customer satisfaction tanked. Zara frowned. Can we replace them? Legally, yes, but it'll be a fight. Those managers are loyal to Eleanor, not the company. Then we'll fight, Zara said. Dana grinned. That's what I wanted to hear. By midday, Zara's head was swimming with information, but she was starting to see the bigger picture. The company wasn't failing, it was being sabotaged. And if she could remove the rot, there was potential for real growth. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dana's assistant, a sharp young man named Marcus, poked his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see Ms. Mitchell. Says it's urgent. Who? Dana asked. Marcus hesitated. Trevor Grayson. Zara's stomach dropped. Dana's expression hardened. Tell him to make an appointment. I did, Marcus said. He said he'll wait in the lobby, as long as it takes. Zara and Dana exchanged a look. Let him wait, Zara said. But an hour later, Trevor was still there. And by late afternoon, Marcus reported that he'd been joined by two other men in expensive suits, lawyers most likely. Dana sighed. He's not going away. We might as well deal with him now. Zara's pulse quickened. Fine. Bring him up. 5 minutes later, Trevor strode into the office like he owned it. His lawyers flanked him, stone-faced and intimidating. Trevor's gaze swept over the space with barely concealed contempt. Nice office, he said. Shame you won't have it long. Zara remained seated, forcing herself to appear calm. What do you want, Trevor? He tossed a folder onto her desk. A settlement offer, $5 million. You walk away, sign an NDA, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. Zara didn't touch the folder. I already told you I'm not selling. Trevor's smile was cold. That was before the board saw those so-called financial irregularities. My lawyers have reviewed the documents. They're inconclusive at best, fabricated at worst. Dana stood. Those documents came directly from Leonard's personal files. They're authentic. One of Trevor's lawyers stepped forward. We'll be filing a motion to dismiss them as evidence. Hearsay from a deceased man who was clearly manipulated in his final years. Manipulated by whom? Zara asked, her voice steady. By you, Trevor said simply. You preyed on an old man's loneliness, convinced him you cared, wormed your way into his life until he didn't know what was real anymore. Zara's hands clenched. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Trevor leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. You're a single mother, working minimum wage, drowning in debt. Then along comes a rich old man and suddenly you're cutting his toast and playing the saint. You saw an opportunity and you took it. Get out, Zara said, her voice low but fierce. Trevor straightened, smirking. We'll see you in court, Ms. Mitchell. And when this is over, you'll wish you'd taken the $5 million. He turned and left, his lawyers following like shadows. The moment the door closed, Zara's composure crumbled. She pressed her hands to her face, her breath shaking. Dana placed a hand on her shoulder. He's trying to rattle you. Don't let him. He's right about one thing, Zara whispered. I was drowning. I was desperate. And you still chose kindness over manipulation, Dana said firmly. That's the difference between you and them. Zara looked up, her eyes wet. What if the court doesn't see it that way? Dana met her gaze. Then we make sure they do. Over the next week, the legal battle intensified. Trevor's team filed motions challenging the will, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. They subpoenaed records from Café Aurora, interviewed former coworkers, and dug into every corner of Zara's life. She felt violated, exposed. Meanwhile, Dana assembled their own legal team, fierce, experienced attorneys who'd worked with Leonard for years. They prepared counterarguments, gathered evidence, and built a case around Leonard's meticulous documentation. But the toll on Zara was immense. She barely slept. She lost weight. Eli noticed, asking why Mommy looked so tired all the time. Just busy with work, sweetheart, she'd say, forcing a smile. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, Eli looked up at her with solemn eyes. Are the bad people going to win? Zara's heart clenched. What bad people? The ones making you sad. She smoothed his hair back. No, baby, they're not going to win. How do you know? Zara thought of Leonard's video, of his belief in her. Because we're going to fight. And sometimes when you fight for the right reasons, you find strength you didn't know you had. Eli considered this. Like superheroes? Zara smiled, genuine this time. Exactly like superheroes. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Zara wore a tailored navy suit Dana had helped her pick out, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked professional, composed. Inside, she was terrified. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected, but no less intimidating. Trevor and Eleanor sat with their legal team on one side, exuding confidence. Zara sat with Dana and their attorneys on the other. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, called the proceedings to order. Trevor's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, we're here because my clients believe their father was unduly influenced in his final years by Ms. Mitchell, who exploited his vulnerability for financial gain. He laid out their argument methodically. Zara's financial desperation, her proximity to Leonard, the suspicious timing of the will's changes. Zara's attorney, a formidable woman named Patricia Nguyen, countered. Your Honor, Leonard Grayson was examined by 3 independent physicians and found to be of sound mind. He documented his reasons extensively, and those reasons had nothing to do with manipulation and everything to do with integrity. Patricia presented Leonard's video testimony, his written statements, and the evidence of financial misconduct he'd uncovered. The judge listened impassively, taking notes. When it was Zara's turn to speak, Patricia asked her a simple question. Ms. Mitchell, did you know Leonard Grayson was wealthy when you served him at Café Aurora? No, Zara said clearly. I had no idea. Did he ever ask you for anything? No, he was just kind. And I tried to be kind back. And when you learned he'd left you his company, what was your first thought? Zara's voice wavered. I thought it was a mistake. Patricia nodded. But you didn't walk away. No, Zara said. Because Leonard trusted me. And I don't take that lightly. The hearing lasted 4 hours. By the end, the judge announced she'd review the evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. As they left the courtroom, Trevor brushed past Zara, his voice low. Enjoy this while it lasts. Zara didn't respond, but Dana squeezed her hand, a silent promise. They weren't done fighting yet. That night, Zara sat in Leonard's office long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights glittered outside the window, and the building was silent, almost peaceful. She opened her laptop and started drafting an email to the company's regional managers. If she was going to lead this company, she needed to start acting like it. The email was simple. My name is Zara Mitchell, and I'm the new owner of Grayson Hospitality Group. I know many of you have questions about the transition, and I want to address them directly. Over the next month, I'll be visiting each of our locations to meet you, hear your concerns, and understand how we can make this company better. Leonard Grayson built something meaningful, and I intend to honor that legacy. Thank you for your dedication. I look forward to working with you. She read it over 3 times, then hit send. Within minutes, replies started coming in. Some were cautious, some were skeptical, but a few were warm, even encouraging. One message stood out. It was from a restaurant manager in Portland named Grace Huang. "Miss Mitchell, I've been with this company for 12 years. Mr. Grayson was a good man, and I trust his judgment. If he believed in you, then so do I." "Welcome." Zara's eyes stung. She typed a reply. "Thank you, Grace. That means more than you know." She closed her laptop and stared out at the city. The fight wasn't over. The Graysons wouldn't stop. The court case loomed. The scrutiny would intensify. But for the first time since this began, Zara felt something other than fear. She felt purpose. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The first restaurant visit was scheduled for the following Monday. Dana had suggested they start with one of the flagship locations, an upscale steakhouse in downtown Seattle called Monarch and Pine. It was the crown jewel of the Grayson portfolio, the kind of place where reservations were made weeks in advance and expense accounts flowed freely. Zara stood outside the entrance at 9 in the morning, an hour before the lunch prep would begin. The building was elegant, all dark wood and brass fixtures, with the kind of understated luxury that whispered old money. She'd walked past places like this 100 times, never imagining she'd step inside, let alone own one. Dana stood beside her, tablet in hand. "The general manager is Lucas Brennan. He's been here 8 years, well-liked by staff, solid track record, but he reports directly to Trevor, so expect some resistance." Zara nodded, her stomach tight. "Let's go." Inside, the restaurant was quiet, tables set with pristine white linens and gleaming silverware. The air smelled of lemon polish and fresh flowers. A man in his 40s emerged from the kitchen, tall and sharp-featured, his chef's coat immaculate. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "I'm Lucas Brennan. Welcome to Monarch and Pine." Zara extended her hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." His handshake was brief, professional. "Of course. Though I'll admit, this visit is unexpected." "I want to see the operations firsthand," Zara said. "Understand how things work." Lucas's expression flickered with something that might have been skepticism. "I'm happy to give you a tour, though I should mention we're in the middle of prep for a private event tonight, city council dinner, 200 guests." "I won't get in the way," Zara assured him. He led them through the dining room into the kitchen where the real magic happened. Stainless steel surfaces gleamed under bright lights, and the space hummed with focused energy. Chefs moved with practiced efficiency, chopping vegetables, searing meat, plating appetizers for the evening service. Lucas gestured broadly. "We run a tight ship here. Staff of 45, including front and back of house. We do about $60,000 a week in revenue, higher during the holidays." Zara watched a young line cook expertly flip a pan, flames leaping. "What's turnover like?" Lucas hesitated. "Higher than I'd like. About 30% annually." Dana glanced up from her tablet. "That's nearly double the industry average." "It's a demanding environment," Lucas said defensively. "Not everyone can handle the pace." Zara noticed a prep cook in the corner, a woman in her 20s with tired eyes and hands moving mechanically through a pile of onions. "Can I talk to some of the staff?" Lucas stiffened. "I'm not sure that's necessary." "I'd like to," Zara said firmly. Zara said. He relented with visible reluctance. "Fine, but make it quick. We're behind schedule as it is." Zara approached the prep cook, who looked up with surprise. "Hi, I'm Zara." The woman wiped her hands on her apron. "I know who you are. You're the new owner, right? The one everyone's talking about." "I guess so," Zara said with a small smile. "What's your name?" "Sienna." "How long have you worked here, Sienna?" 2 years, started as a dishwasher, moved up to prep. Zara glanced at the mountain of onions. "That's a lot of onions." Sienna laughed, but there was an edge to it. "Event tonight. They always leave prep to the last minute, then blame us when things don't get done." "Do you like working here?" Sienna's smile faded. "Honestly? It pays the bills, but it's hard. Long hours, no breaks, and if you complain, you're out." Lucas appeared at Zara's shoulder. "Sienna, don't you have work to finish?" Sienna's expression shuddered. "Yes, chef." She turned back to her onions. Zara felt a familiar anger rising, the same anger she'd felt when managers at Café Aurora treated employees like disposable parts. Lucas, can we talk in your office? He led them to a small, cluttered office off the main corridor. Zara closed the door behind them. What Sienna just described, Zara said, is that accurate? Lucas crossed his arms. This is a high-pressure kitchen. If people can't handle it, they should work somewhere else. High pressure doesn't mean abusive, Zara countered. No breaks? Threats of termination for speaking up? With all due respect, Miss Mitchell, you don't understand how restaurants work. Dana's voice was icy. Miss Mitchell worked in restaurants for years. She understands perfectly. Lucas's jaw tightened. Look, I run this kitchen the way Mr. Trevor Grayson wants it run. Efficiently, profitably. If you have a problem with that, take it up with him. Zara met his eyes. Trevor doesn't own this company anymore. I do. And things are going to change. Lucas's expression darkened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Zara said, but it's mine to make. Over the next 2 weeks, Zara visited 8 more locations. Each one told a similar story. Overworked staff, high turnover, corners cut to maximize profit. The family diners were understaffed, forcing servers to cover twice as many tables. The casual dining spots used cheaper ingredients than their menus advertised. At one location in Tacoma, she found employees working 12-hour shifts without proper meal breaks. At each stop, Zara listened. She spoke to dishwashers and line cooks, servers and hosts. She heard stories of managers who belittled employees, of wage theft disguised as training periods, of workers too afraid to call in sick for fear of losing their jobs. And at each stop, she grew angrier. By the time she returned to headquarters, Zara had filled 3 notebooks with observations and compiled a list of immediate changes that needed to be made. Dana met her in the conference room where they'd been working late into the evenings. You look exhausted, Dana said, handing her a cup of coffee. I am, Zara admitted, but I'm also furious. Dana sat down. What did you find? Zara flipped open her notebook. Systemic abuse. These restaurants are making money by exploiting the people who work there, and the managers know it. They're just following orders from Trevor and Eleanor. Leonard knew, Dana said quietly. That's why he left detailed instructions about what needed to change. But he couldn't do it himself. He was too old, too tired. He needed someone who'd fight. Zara looked at the pages of notes, the stories of workers trapped in jobs that ground them down. We start with the managers. Anyone who's abusing staff or violating labor laws gets replaced. Oh, that's going to create chaos, Dana warned. And Trevor will use it against you. He'll claim you're destroying the company. Let him, Zara said. I'm not running sweatshops. Dana smiled, something fierce and approving. Okay, let's do it. They started with Monarch and Pine. Lucas Brennan was terminated for labor violations and replaced with a sous chef named Carmen Rodriguez, who'd been quietly advocating for better conditions for years. The transition was rocky. Lucas fought back, threatening lawsuits and smearing Zara in industry circles. But Carmen proved capable and compassionate, and within weeks, staff morale improved dramatically. Word spread quickly through the company. Some managers resigned rather than face scrutiny. Others doubled down, loyal to the Grayson family. But slowly, carefully, Zara and Dana built a new leadership team, people who believed in treating employees with dignity. The board took notice. At the next meeting, Richard Aldridge acknowledged the changes with cautious approval. Employee satisfaction scores are up. Turnover is already starting to decline. Whatever you're doing, Ms. Mitchell, it's working. But not everyone was pleased. Trevor cornered Zara in the hallway after the meeting, his face twisted with rage. You're destroying everything my grandfather built, he hissed. Zara didn't flinch. Your grandfather built restaurants where people mattered. You turned them into profit machines. Profit is what keeps businesses alive, Trevor shot back. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? You're just playing dress-up, pretending to be something you're not. Maybe, Zara said, but at least I'm not pretending to care about people while I exploit them. Trevor's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Zara thought he might actually strike her. But Dana appeared, her presence a silent warning. Trevor backed off, his voice low and venomous. This isn't over. No, Zara agreed. It's not. The court ruling came down on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Zara was in her office reviewing financial projections with Dana when Patricia and Gwen called. We won, Patricia said without preamble. The judge ruled in your favor. The will stands. Trevor and Eleanor's challenge has been dismissed. Zara's hand tightened on the phone. Are you serious? Completely. The judge found Leonard's documentation compelling and saw no evidence of undue influence. You're the legal owner of Grayson Hospitality Group, no contest. Relief flooded through Zara, so intense it left her dizzy. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. When she hung up, Dana was grinning. We won? We won, Zara confirmed, her voice breaking. Dana pulled her into a fierce hug. I knew we would. Leonard knew we would. But even as they celebrated, Zara felt a gnawing unease. Trevor wouldn't accept this quietly. He'd find another way to fight. She was right. 3 days later, Zara arrived at her office to find Marcus waiting, his face pale. What's wrong? She asked immediately. He handed her a tablet. This went live an hour ago. Zara looked at the screen. It was a news article from a local business journal. The headline read, New owner of Grayson Hospitality Group faces allegations of fraud. Her stomach dropped. The article detailed anonymous claims that Zara had falsified documents, manipulated Leonard during his final months, and was now running the company into the ground with reckless management decisions. It quoted industry insiders who questioned her qualifications and suggested the company was on the verge of collapse. This is libel, Dana said, reading over Zara's shoulder. It's also effective, Zara said numbly. People will believe it. And they did. By noon, the story had been picked up by 3 other outlets. By evening, it was trending on social media. Zara's phone buzzed incessantly with messages. Some supportive, many hostile. One text stood out. It was from an unknown number. You should have taken the settlement. This is only the beginning. Zara showed it to Dana, who immediately called their legal team. But the damage was done. Investors started calling, concerned about the company's stability. 2 board members requested emergency meetings. Even some of the new managers Zara had hired expressed worry. That night, Zara sat in her apartment, staring at her laptop screen. The comments on the articles were brutal. People called her a gold digger, a fraud, a manipulator. They dissected her appearance, her background, her credentials. They questioned whether a mere waitress had any business running a corporation. Eli was asleep in the next room, unaware of the storm surrounding them. Zara envied his innocence. Her phone rang. It was Patricia. I've reviewed the articles, Patricia said. We can file defamation suits, but it'll take time. In the meantime, we need to control the narrative. How? Zara asked, her voice hollow. You need to go public. Tell your story. Show people who you really are. Zara's chest tightened. I don't want to be in the spotlight. I know, Patricia said gently. But right now you're letting Trevor and Eleanor define you. You need to take that power back. Zara closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. I'll think about it. But that night, as she lay in bed unable to sleep, she kept thinking about the workers she'd met. Sienna, chopping onions with tired hands. The server in Tacoma, who'd quietly told Zara she hadn't had a day off in 3 weeks. The dishwasher who'd thanked Zara for asking his name because no one else ever had. They were counting on her, and she couldn't let them down just because she was afraid. The next morning, Zara called Patricia back. Set up the interview. Patricia arranged for Zara to sit down with a respected business reporter named Claire Jennings, known for fair, in-depth profiles. The interview was scheduled for the following week to be filmed at the flagship Monarch and Pine location. Dana helped Zara prepare, running through potential questions and crafting talking points. But Dana was clear about one thing. Don't try to sound like a CEO, Dana said. Be yourself. That's your strength. The day of the interview, Zara arrived at Monarch and Pine early. The dining room had been set up with cameras and lights, professional but intimate. Claire Jennings was already there, reviewing notes. She looked up as Zara approached and smiled warmly. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for doing this. Please call me Zara. They sat across from each other at a corner table. The cameras started rolling. Claire began with the obvious question. You've been the subject of intense scrutiny since inheriting Grayson Hospitality Group. How are you handling it? Zara took a breath. Honestly, it's been overwhelming. I'm not used to this level of attention, but I'm trying to focus on what matters, the company, the employees, honoring Leonard Grayson's legacy. There have been allegations that you manipulated Mr. Grayson, Claire said carefully. How do you respond to that? Zara met her eyes. Leonard Grayson was one of the kindest people I've ever met. I didn't know he was wealthy. I didn't know he owned this company. I just knew he was a man who deserved to be treated with respect. And when I found out what he'd left me, I was terrified. I still am, some days. But he believed I could do this, and I'm trying to prove him right. Claire's expression softened. Why do you think he chose you? Zara thought of Leonard's video, his letter. Because I cared. Not about his money or his empire, just about him. And I think he saw that I cared about the people who worked in his restaurants too. The ones who get overlooked, the ones who work double shifts and still can't make ends meet. Because I was one of them. Claire leaned forward. What changes are you making? We're starting with how we treat employees, Zara said. Fair wages, reasonable hours, safe working conditions. It sounds basic, but in too many of our locations, it wasn't happening, and we're listening. Really listening to what workers need. Some critics say these changes will hurt profitability. Zara's voice was firm. I don't believe that. I think when you treat people well, they do better work. They stay longer. They care more. And that creates a better experience for customers. It's not just the right thing to do, it's good business. The interview lasted an hour. By the end, Zara felt drained but strangely lighter. She'd told her truth, whether people believed it was out of her control. The interview aired 3 days later and went viral almost immediately. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People shared clips on social media praising Zara's honesty and her commitment to workers. Several prominent business leaders publicly endorsed her approach. Even some of the critical articles published corrections, walking back unverified claims. More importantly, employees across the company reached out. Dozens of messages flooded Zara's inbox, thanking her for standing up for them, for making changes, for seeing them as people. One message came from Grace Huang, the Portland manager who'd welcomed Zara on her first day. You're exactly what this company needed. Thank you for fighting for us. Zara read it 3 times, her eyes burning. But Trevor and Eleanor weren't finished. 2 days after the interview aired, Dana burst into Zara's office, her face pale. We have a problem, a big one. Zara looked up from her laptop. What now? Dana set her tablet on the desk. Eleanor called an emergency investor meeting. She's claiming financial irregularities in your management and demanding a full audit. Zara's blood ran cold. Can she do that? She still holds significant shares, Dana said, and she has allies on the board. If enough of them support her, she can force an investigation. But we haven't done anything wrong. I know, Dana said, but that's not the point. She's trying to create chaos, make you look incompetent. Even if the audit clears you, the damage will be done. Zara stood, pacing. When's the meeting? Tomorrow morning. Then we need to be ready. Dana nodded. I've already started pulling together our financials, every transaction, every decision, fully documented. That night, Zara and Dana worked until 3 a.m, assembling a comprehensive report. Every dollar accounted for, every change justified. It was exhaustive, meticulous, and irrefutable. The investor meeting was held in a hotel conference room downtown, packed with shareholders, board members, and media. Eleanor stood at the podium, poised and icy. Ladies and gentlemen, I've called this meeting because I'm deeply concerned about the direction of this company. Since Ms. Mitchell took control, we've seen reckless spending, mass terminations of experienced managers, and operational chaos. I believe a full independent audit is necessary to protect shareholder interests. Murmurs rippled through the room. Zara sat at the front table, Dana beside her, her heart pounding. Eleanor continued. Furthermore, I have reason to believe certain financial transactions were made without proper board approval. That's a lie, Dana said, standing. Eleanor's eyes flashed. Excuse me? Dana approached the podium with a stack of documents. Every transaction made under Ms. Mitchell's leadership has been approved and documented. Here's the proof. She distributed copies to the investors. Zara watched as they flipped through the pages, their expressions shifting from suspicion to surprise. One investor, a woman named Helen Marks, spoke up. These financials are actually quite strong. Revenue is up, expenses are controlled, and employee retention is improving. Another investor nodded. I don't see any irregularities here. Eleanor's composure cracked. You're not looking closely enough. We are, Helen said firmly. And what we're seeing is a company that's finally being run ethically. I, for one, support Ms. Mitchell's leadership. A chorus of agreement followed. Eleanor's face went white with fury. She gathered her materials and stormed out, Trevor following. Richard Aldridge stood. It appears the motion for an audit is unnecessary. This meeting is adjourned. As the room emptied, Helen approached Zara. You've got guts, Ms. Mitchell. Keep it up. Zara shook her hand, barely able to speak. Outside, Dana hugged her tightly. You did it. You actually did it. But Zara didn't feel victorious. She felt exhausted, wrung out, like she'd been fighting for months without rest. Because she had been. And she knew the fight wasn't over yet. That night, Zara allowed herself one glass of wine, something she rarely did, and sat on her small balcony overlooking the street. The city hummed below, oblivious to the war she'd been fighting. Eli was asleep inside, his soft breathing audible through the open window. She thought about Helen Marks's words, about the investors who'd stood with her and felt a fragile hope beginning to take root. But experience had taught her not to trust hope too quickly. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dana. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we keep building. Zara smiled faintly and typed back. You too. She finished her wine and went inside, checking on Eli one last time before crawling into bed. Sleep came easier than it had in weeks, but her dreams were restless, filled with boardrooms and accusatory voices. The next morning brought unexpected news. Marcus knocked on her office door at 8:30, looking uncertain. There's someone here to see you, he said. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Who is it? Zara asked, glancing up from the staffing report she'd been reviewing. She said her name is Victoria Grayson, Leonard's sister. Zara's pen stilled. Leonard had rarely mentioned family beyond Eleanor and Trevor. She hadn't even known he had a sister. Send her in, Zara said, her curiosity overriding her caution. A moment later, an elderly woman entered. She was probably in her early 80s, elegant in a tailored cream suit, her white hair swept back in a careful style. But it was her eyes that caught Zara's attention, the same pale blue as Leonard's, sharp and assessing. Ms. Mitchell, the woman said, her voice cultured but warm. I'm Victoria Grayson, Leonard's younger sister. Zara stood, extending her hand. Please, sit down. I didn't know Leonard had a sister. Victoria's smile was sad. We weren't close in recent years. Family politics? She settled into the chair across from Zara's desk with the grace of someone accustomed to formality. I only learned about Leonard's passing a few weeks ago. I've been traveling abroad. When I returned and heard what Eleanor and Trevor were doing, I had to come. I'm sorry for your loss, Zara said quietly. And I'm sorry for what my niece and nephew have put you through, Victoria replied. Leonard spoke to me about you, last year when I visited for Christmas. He told me he'd found someone who reminded him why he started this company. Zara's throat tightened. He said that? He did. And he told me that if anything happened to him, I should make sure you had support. Victoria reached into her handbag and withdrew a sealed envelope. He asked me to give you this, but only if you proved yourself worthy of his trust. Zara took the envelope with trembling hands. Her name was written on it in Leonard's familiar script. I've been watching from a distance, Victoria continued. The court case, the interview, the investor meeting. You've handled yourself with more grace than most people twice your age. Leonard was right about you. Zara broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. Leonard's handwriting filled the page. Dear Zara, if Victoria is giving you this letter, it means you've faced the worst my family can throw at you and you're still standing. I'm proud of you, though I wish I could tell you that in person. There's something I need you to know. Hidden in my personal safe, the one in the study at the Bellevue estate, are documents Eleanor and Trevor have been desperate to destroy. Financial records, recorded conversations, evidence of embezzlement and fraud going back 5 years. I gathered it all knowing this day would come. The combination to the safe is your son's birthday, August 14th, 2019. Use this evidence wisely. Not for revenge, but for justice. And remember, the people who work in these restaurants deserve leaders who value them. Don't ever forget that. With enduring respect, Leonard Zara read it twice, her heart pounding. There's evidence. In his safe. Victoria nodded. I suspected as much. Leonard was meticulous about documentation. Eleanor had him barred from the estate after his death, claiming she needed time to grieve. But we both know she was searching for something. She's looking for this, Zara said, holding up the letter. Then we need to get to it first, Victoria said. I still have keys to the estate. Eleanor doesn't know I'm in town. If we move quickly, we can retrieve the documents before she realizes what's happening. Zara's mind raced. When? Tonight, Victoria said. Eleanor hosts a charity gala every year on the third Thursday of the month. She'll be occupied until at least midnight. That gives us a window. Dana appeared in the doorway, having overheard the last part of the conversation. You're talking about breaking into the estate? It's not breaking in if I have keys, Victoria said calmly. I'm family. I have every right to be there. Dana looked at Zara. This is risky. If Eleanor catches you, she won't, Victoria interrupted. I know that house better than Eleanor does, and I know where Leonard's study is. Zara met Dana's eyes. We need that evidence. It could end this fight once and for all. Dana sighed. Then I'm coming with you. That evening, Zara arranged for Mrs. Pacheco to watch Eli overnight, telling her only that she had urgent business to attend to. Eli hugged her tightly before she left. Be safe, Mommy, he said, his small arms wrapped around her neck. I will, sweetheart. I promise. She met Victoria and Dana in the parking lot of a quiet park 3 blocks from the Bellevue estate. Victoria's car was a vintage Mercedes, immaculately maintained. They drove in silence through the wealthy neighborhood, past manicured lawns and security gates. The Grayson estate sat on 2 acres overlooking Lake Washington, a sprawling Tudor-style mansion that spoke of old wealth and careful preservation. Victoria parked down the street, out of view of the main gate. The security system has been updated, Victoria said, but I know the override code. Leonard never changed it. They approached through a side garden, staying in the shadows. Victoria punched in a code at a service entrance and the door clicked open. Inside, the house was dark and silent, smelling faintly of furniture polish and old books. Victoria led them through a hallway lined with oil paintings, past a formal living room, to a wood-paneled study at the back of the house. Moonlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating shelves packed with books and a massive mahogany desk. The safe is behind that painting, Victoria whispered, pointing to a portrait of a stern-looking man in 19th-century dress. Dana kept watch at the door while Zara carefully lifted the painting off the wall. Behind it was a steel safe, its combination lock gleaming in the dim light. Zara's hand shook as she turned the dial. August 14th, 2019. Eli's birthday. The lock clicked and the safe door swung open. Inside were stacks of documents, USB drives, and a leather-bound journal. Zara pulled everything out, her heart racing. The documents were organized with typical Leonard precision, labeled folders, dated entries, meticulous notes. We need to go, Dana urged from the doorway. Now! Zara stuffed everything into the bag Victoria had brought. They were halfway back down the hallway when light suddenly flooded the entrance. Stop right there, a cold voice commanded. Eleanor stood in the doorway, still wearing her evening gown from the gala, her face twisted with fury. Behind her were 2 security guards. I knew you'd try something, Eleanor hissed. Breaking and entering, I'll have you arrested. Victoria stepped forward calmly. This is still my brother's house, Eleanor, and I have every right to be here. You have no rights here, Eleanor spat. This estate is mine now. Actually, Victoria said, it's not. Leonard's will specified that the estate remains in family trust, which means I have as much claim to it as you do. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. What's in that bag? Nothing that concerns you, Zara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Guards, seize that bag. The security guards moved forward, but Dana stepped between them and Zara. Touch her and I'll have both of you charged with assault. Ms. Mitchell is the owner of Grayson Hospitality Group and a guest of Mrs. Victoria Grayson. You have no authority here. The guards hesitated, looking between Eleanor and Dana uncertainly. Eleanor's face went crimson. You think you've won? You think stealing documents in the middle of the night makes you legitimate? We didn't steal anything, Zara said. Leonard left these for me, just like he left me his company. My father was a senile old man who didn't know what he was doing. Your father was brilliant, Victoria said sharply, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He saw what you and Trevor had become, and he wanted better for his legacy. Eleanor's hands clenched at her sides. Get out! Get out of my house! Gladly, Victoria said. She turned to the guards. Gentlemen, you're witnesses. We're leaving peacefully. Ms. Grayson has no grounds for any charges. They walked out into the cool night air, Zara clutching the bag like a lifeline. Eleanor screamed something behind them, but Zara didn't look back. In the car, Dana let out a shaky breath. That was too close. But we got what we needed, Zara said, looking down at the bag. Victoria started the engine. Now comes the hard part, deciding what to do with it. Back at Zara's apartment, they spread the documents across her small dining table. What they found was damning. Detailed financial records showed systematic embezzlement, funds diverted to shell companies, inflated expense reports, kickbacks from vendors. And it wasn't just Trevor and Eleanor. Several board members and executives were implicated. The USB drives contained audio recordings of conversations where the conspirators discussed their schemes openly, confident that Leonard was too old to notice or care. The leather journal was Leonard's personal account, documenting everything he'd observed and suspected. His handwriting grew shakier toward the end, but his mind remained sharp. One entry stood out, dated 3 months before his death. I'm running out of time. My health is failing, and Eleanor knows it. She's positioning Trevor to take over completely once I'm gone. They think I'm oblivious, but I see everything. I've made my choice. Zara Mitchell will inherit this company, and I've given her every tool she needs to clean house. I pray she has the courage to use them. Zara's vision blurred with tears. Dana looked up from a financial spreadsheet. This is enough to bring criminal charges. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. They could go to prison. But will it hold up in court? Zara asked. Victoria, who'd been quietly reviewing documents, nodded. Leonard was thorough. Chain of custody is documented. Dates and amounts match bank records. And those recordings are admissible. Washington is a two-party consent state for recordings, but these were made in Leonard's own home and office, where he had every right to record. So what do we do? Zara asked. Dana leaned back. We could go to the authorities. Let the legal system handle it. Or, Victoria said slowly, we could give them a choice. Zara looked at her. What kind of choice? They resign from the board, divest their shares, and leave quietly. In exchange, we don't press charges. They avoid prison, but they lose everything else. That's letting them off easy, Dana said. Maybe, Victoria agreed. But it's also clean. No prolonged court battles, no media circus. The company moves forward without the distraction. Zara thought of Eli, of the employees depending on her, of the energy she'd already spent fighting. I want them to pay for what they've done. And they will, Victoria said. Just not in the way they'd expect. For people like Eleanor and Trevor, losing power is worse than prison. Take away their influence, their status, their access to the empire they tried to steal. That's true punishment. Zara looked at the documents spread before her, at Leonard's careful handwriting, his methodical gathering of evidence. He'd given her power. Now she had to decide how to use it. We give them the choice, she said finally. But if they refuse, we go to the authorities with everything. Dana nodded. I'll set up a meeting. The meeting was arranged for the following afternoon at a neutral location, a conference room in Patricia Nguyen's law office. Eleanor and Trevor arrived with their attorneys, radiating hostility. This better be important, Trevor said, dropping into a chair. We have actual business to attend to. Patricia laid a folder on the table. I suggest you review these documents before you say anything else. Eleanor opened the folder. Her face went white. Trevor leaned over to look, and Zara watched the color drain from his face too. Where did you get these? Eleanor whispered. Leonard left them for Ms. Mitchell, Patricia said calmly. along with detailed instructions on how to use them. One of their attorneys, a sharp-faced man named Kaufman, flipped through the pages quickly. His expression grew increasingly grim. "This is privileged information. It's evidence of multiple felonies," Patricia interrupted, "which we're prepared to turn over to federal prosecutors unless our client's terms are met." Trevor shot to his feet. "This is blackmail." "This is justice," Zara said quietly. "You spent years stealing from your own grandfather's company. You exploited workers, manipulated finances, and betrayed everything Leonard built. You did it because you thought you could get away with it." "We were maximizing shareholder value," Eleanor said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You were committing fraud," Dana said. "And we have proof." Kaufman conferred quietly with Eleanor and Trevor. Finally, he spoke. "What are your terms?" Patricia slid another document across the table. "You resign from the board immediately. You divest all shares within 60 days. You relinquish any claim to the company or its subsidiaries. And you sign non-disclosure agreements preventing you from discussing company business ever again." "And if we agree?" Kaufman asked. "No criminal charges are filed," Patricia said. "You walk away with your shares' current market value and your freedom." Trevor laughed bitterly. "Our shares are worth millions. You expect us to just hand that over?" "The alternative is federal prison," Dana said flatly. "Your choice." Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached for the document. She read it slowly, her mouth pressed into a thin line. Zara watched her, feeling no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. "This is what you wanted," Eleanor said finally, looking at Zara. "To humiliate us. To take everything." "No," Zara said. "I wanted you to stop hurting people. This is just what has to happen to make that possible." Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears. Whether from rage or grief, Zara couldn't tell. She looked at Trevor, who stared at the table, his jaw clenched. "We need time to consider," Kaufman said. "You have 24 hours, Patricia said. "After that, we file with the U.S. Attorney's Office." They left without another word. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the meeting, Eleanor's stricken face, Trevor's barely contained fury. Part of her felt guilty for backing them into a corner. Another part reminded her of Sienna chopping onions, of workers denied breaks, of systematic abuse disguised as business. At 2 a.m, her phone rang. It was Patricia. "They signed," she said. "All of them. Eleanor, Trevor, and 3 board members who were implicated in the scheme. They're out." Zara sat up in bed, her heart pounding. "It's over?" "This part is," Patricia said. "Now comes the rebuilding." Over the next month, the transition was swift and decisive. Eleanor and Trevor resigned publicly, citing personal reasons. The implicated board members followed suit. New board members were appointed, people with integrity and vision, recommended by Victoria and vetted thoroughly by Dana. The media coverage was intense but generally positive. Business analysts praised the leadership change as necessary for the company's future. Employee satisfaction scores continued to climb. Revenue remained strong. Zara threw herself into the work, visiting every restaurant location, meeting with staff, implementing changes. She established employee councils to give workers a voice in company decisions. She raised minimum wages across all locations and instituted profit-sharing programs. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and challenges, moments when she doubted herself. But Dana was always there, steady and capable. Victoria became an unexpected mentor, sharing insights from her own decades in business. And the employees, the people who actually made the restaurants run, responded with loyalty and dedication that moved Zara to tears. One evening, 6 weeks after Eleanor and Trevor's departure, Zara sat in Leonard's office watching the sunset paint Elliott Bay in shades of gold and pink. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. Grace Huang, the Portland manager, stepped inside. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I'm in town for the regional meeting tomorrow." "Not at all," Zara said, gesturing to a chair. "How are things in Portland?" "Good. Really good, actually," Grace smiled. "Staff morale is higher than I've seen in years, and our customer reviews have improved significantly since we started treating employees better." "I'm glad," Zara said, meaning it. Grace hesitated. "I wanted to thank you." What you've done for this company, for all of us, it matters. Leonard would be proud. Zara's eyes burned. I hope so. I know so, Grace said firmly. You gave us our dignity back. That's worth more than you can imagine. After Grace left, Zara pulled out the letter Leonard had left with Victoria. She read it one more time, his words a reminder of why she'd fought so hard. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Pacheco. Eli wants to say goodnight. A moment later, a video call connected. Eli's face filled the screen, his gap-toothed smile bright. Hi, Mommy. When are you coming home? Soon, baby. Another hour, maybe. Mrs. Pacheco made cookies. Save me one, okay? Okay. Love you, Mommy. Love you too, sweetheart. The call ended and Zara sat back, looking around the office that had once seemed impossibly foreign. It still felt surreal sometimes, this new life, but it was hers. She'd earned it, not through manipulation or luck, but through the simple act of caring when no one else did. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle on, thousands of lives continuing their own stories. Somewhere out there, Eleanor and Trevor were adjusting to their new reality. Somewhere, workers were finishing shifts at Grayson restaurants, knowing they'd be treated fairly. And somewhere, Leonard's legacy was being honored in exactly the way he'd hoped. Zara gathered her things and headed home to her son, to the small apartment that still felt more real than any estate ever would. The fight wasn't completely over. There would be more challenges, more people who doubted her, more obstacles to overcome. But tonight, she'd won something more important than any battle. She'd proven that kindness wasn't weakness. It was the strongest weapon of all. The morning of the annual investor presentation arrived with crisp autumn air and clear skies. Zara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her charcoal suit. Tailored, professional, a far cry from the frayed dress she'd worn to that first board meeting 6 months ago. Eli sat on the edge of the bathtub, swinging his legs and watching her with curious eyes. You look fancy, Mommy, he said. She smiled at him in the reflection. Big day today, sweetheart. This is where we show everyone what we've built. Are the mean people going to be there? Zara knelt down to his level. No, baby. The mean people are gone. This is just us now, the good people. Eli wrapped his arms around her neck. You're the best mommy in the whole world. She held him tight, blinking back unexpected tears. And you're the best son. Don't ever forget that. At the presentation venue, a sleek downtown hotel ballroom, Dana was already coordinating with the AV team, ensuring every slide, every video, every detail was perfect. She looked up as Zara entered and smiled. Ready to knock their socks off? Ready to try, Zara said, her stomach fluttering with nerves. The room filled quickly. Investors, board members, financial analysts, and media representatives took their seats. Zara recognized Helen Marks in the front row, offering an encouraging nod. Victoria sat near the back, elegant and serene. And conspicuously absent were Eleanor and Trevor, gone from the company, gone from this world they'd once dominated. Richard Aldridge opened the presentation with brief remarks, then turned the podium over to Zara. She stepped forward, her heart hammering, but her voice steady. 6 months ago, I inherited a company I didn't expect and wasn't sure I deserved. I was terrified. I had no MBA, no corporate experience, no family connections. What I had was a belief that people matter, that the workers who serve food, clean tables, and keep kitchens running deserve dignity and fair treatment. Some of you doubted whether that belief could translate into successful business. Today, I want to show you that it can. She clicked to the first slide, a graph showing employee retention rates. When I took over, annual turnover was 32%. Today, it's down to 18%. That's a 43% reduction in just 6 months. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Lower turnover means lower recruitment and training costs. It means experienced staff who provide better customer service. And it means people who care about the company's success because they feel valued by it. The next slide showed customer satisfaction scores. Our average rating across all locations has increased from 3.8 to 4.6 stars. Revenue per location is up 11%. And here's the most important number. She clicked again. The slide showed profit margins. Despite increasing wages and improving benefits, our profit margins have actually grown by 7%. Because when you treat people well, they do better work, they stay longer, they care more, and customers notice. Helen Marks was nodding. Other investors leaned forward, engaged. Zara continued, walking them through initiatives implemented across the company, employee councils that gave workers a voice in scheduling and policies, profit-sharing programs that aligned staff interests with company success, mental health resources and childcare assistance, training programs that created pathways for advancement. These aren't just nice ideas, Zara said. They're smart business, and the results speak for themselves. She clicked to a video testimonial. On the screen, Sienna, the prep cook from Monarch and Pine, spoke directly to the camera. I used to dread coming to work. The hours were brutal, the managers were mean, and I felt invisible. But everything changed when Ms. Mitchell took over. Suddenly, people asked how I was doing. They gave me breaks. They treated me like a human being. Now I actually look forward to my shifts. And I'm enrolled in culinary school because the company offers tuition assistance. This job isn't just a paycheck anymore. It's a future. The video ended. The room was silent for a beat. Then applause erupted. Zara let it wash over her, then raised a hand for quiet. That's what this company stands for now. Not just profit, but purpose. Not just transactions, but transformation. Leonard Grayson believed in that vision, and I'm committed to honoring it. She opened the floor for questions. A financial analyst raised his hand. Ms. Mitchell, these improvements are impressive, but what's your long-term strategy? How do you plan to scale while maintaining these standards? Carefully, Zara said with a slight smile. We're not pursuing growth for growth's sake. We're focusing on sustainable expansion, new locations only when we have the infrastructure and leadership to support them. Quality over quantity. Another investor spoke up. What about competition? Other restaurant groups are cutting costs to undercut pricing. How do you compete? By offering something they can't, Zara said. An experience where customers feel good about where they're spending their money. People want to support businesses that treat employees well. We're seeing it in our customer demographics. Younger diners especially are choosing us because of our values. Helen Marks raised her hand. I have a question, but it's more personal. How has this experience changed you? Zara paused, considering. It's taught me that the things I thought were weaknesses, my background, my empathy, my lack of traditional credentials, were actually strengths. I see things other CEOs might miss because I've lived the life our employees live. I understand what it's like to choose between paying rent and fixing your car, to work when you're sick because you can't afford to lose a shift, to feel invisible. That perspective makes me a better leader. The room fell silent, absorbing her words. Helen smiled. I think Leonard knew exactly what he was doing. The presentation concluded with a standing ovation. Investors lined up to speak with Zara, offering congratulations and expressing confidence in her leadership. The media coverage that followed was overwhelmingly positive. Business journals praised her innovative approach. Industry leaders reached out seeking advice. But the moment that mattered most came later that evening. Zara had planned something special for the employees, a company-wide celebration at the original Monarch and Pine location. Every staff member from the Seattle area was invited, along with their families. The restaurant was transformed, tables rearranged to create an open, festive space. When Zara arrived with Eli, the room was already packed with people laughing, talking, celebrating. Carmen, the new general manager, greeted her warmly. Everyone's been asking when you'd get here, Carmen said. Zara looked around at the faces. Line cooks and servers, dishwashers and hosts, people she'd met on her visits, people whose names she'd learned and whose stories she'd heard. They applauded as she entered, and Eli squeezed her hand tightly. Are all these people your friends, Mommy? They're family, Zara said softly. She made her way through the crowd, stopping to chat with employees, thanking them for their dedication. Sienna approached shyly, carrying a beautifully decorated cake. We made this for you, Sienna said. All of us. Wanted to say thank you. The cake was inscribed with simple words. Thank you for seeing us. Zara's vision blurred. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Sienna replied. You already did everything. Dana appeared at Zara's elbow, grinning. You're going to make me cry, and I don't cry in public. Too late. Zara said, wiping her own eyes. As the evening progressed, employees took turns sharing stories. A server from the Tacoma location talked about finally being able to afford her daughter's medical treatment thanks to the improved health insurance. A line cook from Portland described how the tuition assistance program was helping him pursue his dream of becoming a chef. A host from a California restaurant thanked Zara for implementing the scheduling system that let her attend her son's soccer games. Each story was a testament to what had changed, to what was possible when people came first. Near the end of the evening, Victoria approached with a glass of champagne. "Leonard would be so proud of what you've accomplished." "I hope so," Zara said. "I know so," Victoria replied. "You didn't just save his company. You fulfilled his vision, and you did it your way, without compromising who you are." "I couldn't have done it without you," Zara said, "or Dana, or Patricia, or so many others." Victoria smiled. "That's what makes you different from Eleanor and Trevor. They thought strength meant standing alone. You understand that real strength is knowing when to lean on others." Later, as the party wound down, Zara found herself standing by the window overlooking the street. Eli had fallen asleep on one of the banquettes, curled up under Dana's jacket. The kitchen staff was cleaning up, their laughter carrying through the space. Grace Huang joined her at the window. "Quite a journey, huh?" "The longest 6 months of my life," Zara admitted. "Worth it, though?" Zara looked at the sleeping form of her son, at the employees chatting and celebrating, at the company she'd fought so hard to protect. Every single second, Grace raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To second chances," Zara countered. They clinked glasses, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. The following week brought an unexpected visitor. Zara was in her office reviewing expansion proposals when Marcus announced that someone was asking to see her, someone without an appointment but claiming it was important. "Who is it?" Zara asked. Marcus hesitated. "She said her name is Eleanor Grayson." Zara's blood went cold. "Tell her to—" "Please," came Eleanor's voice from the hallway. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Zara exchanged glances with Dana, who'd been working across the desk. Dana's expression was wary. "You don't have to see her." But something in Eleanor's voice, a quality Zara had never heard before, something almost like humility, made her curious. "Let her in, but stay here, Dana." Eleanor entered, and the change was startling. Gone were the designer clothes and imperious bearing. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, minimal jewelry, her hair less carefully styled. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Thank you for seeing me," Eleanor said quietly. Zara gestured to a chair but remained standing. "You have 5 minutes." Eleanor sat, her hands folded in her lap. "I won't waste your time with excuses or justifications. What I did, what Trevor and I did, was wrong. We betrayed my father's trust and hurt countless people in the process." "Is this an apology?" Zara asked, her tone neutral. "It's an acknowledgement," Eleanor said. "For months I told myself we were the victims, that you were an opportunist who manipulated a vulnerable old man. It was easier to believe that than to face what we'd become." She paused, her voice cracking slightly. "But I've had time to think, to really look at what we did, and I'm ashamed." Zara studied her, searching for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. But Eleanor's eyes, those cold, calculating eyes that had glared at Zara across boardroom tables, now just looked tired. "My father tried to talk to me," Eleanor continued. 2 years ago, he sat me down and said the company had lost its soul, that we were treating people like numbers instead of human beings. I laughed at him, called him sentimental and out of touch, told him the world had changed and he needed to accept it. "He was right," Zara said simply. "I know that now." Eleanor's hands twisted in her lap. "I've been working as a consultant, small businesses, nothing glamorous. And I've been watching what you've done with the company, the changes you've made, the results you've achieved. You proved everything I believed was wrong." Dana leaned forward. "Why are you really here, Eleanor?" Eleanor met her gaze. "Because I needed to say I'm sorry. Not for your forgiveness, I don't deserve that, but because you deserve to hear it, and because maybe if I say it out loud, I can start to forgive myself." Zara walked to the window, looking out at the city. She thought about all the battles she'd fought, the sleepless nights, the moments she doubted herself. She thought about Eleanor's cruelty, Trevor's threats, the systematic abuse they'd enabled. "I appreciate you coming," Zara said finally, "and I accept your acknowledgement, but I can't give you absolution. That's not mine to give. The people you hurt, the employees who were exploited, the workers who suffered, they're the ones you need to make peace with." Eleanor nodded slowly. "You're right. I just wanted you to know that what my father saw in you, what he trusted you to do, you've proven him right in every possible way, and I'm sorry I tried to destroy that." She stood, and Zara saw genuine regret in her expression. "I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't." "I don't forgive you," Zara said honestly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I hope you find a way to be better, to use what you've learned to help others." Eleanor smiled sadly. "That's more grace than I deserve." "Thank you." After she left, Dana let out a long breath. "That was unexpected." "People can change," Zara said, "or at least they can try." "Do you really think she meant it?" Zara shrugged. "I think she meant it in that moment. Whether it lasts is up to her." The months that followed brought continued growth and success. Grayson Hospitality Group opened 3 new locations, each one built on the principles Zara had established: fair wages, strong benefits, employee input in operations. The company was featured in business publications as a model for ethical corporate leadership. Zara hired a team of talented executives who shared her vision, allowing her to delegate more and spend more time with Eli. She moved out of the small apartment into a comfortable house with a yard where Eli could play. Nothing ostentatious, just a real home with room for him to grow. Mrs. Pacheco moved into the guest house, officially joining their family. She'd become as much a grandmother to Eli as a neighbor, and having her close brought Zara peace. One Saturday afternoon, nearly 8 months after inheriting the company, Zara took Eli to Café Aurora, the place where everything had started. Angela, the shift manager, greeted her with a huge hug. "Zara, we heard you might stop by. Jesse's making your favorite breakfast special." They sat at table 7, Leonard's table, and Zara felt a bittersweet ache in her chest. Eli colored happily on paper placemats while Zara sipped coffee and watched the familiar rhythm of the cafe. A young waitress approached their table, probably 19 or 20, with the same tired eyes Zara remembered seeing in her own mirror. She refilled Zara's coffee carefully, her hands slightly trembling. "First week?" Zara asked gently. The girl nodded. "Is it that obvious?" "You're doing great," Zara assured her. "Just remember, every customer is a person. Treat them with respect, and most will treat you the same way." The waitress smiled gratefully and moved on. Angela slid into the booth across from them. "You know, I think about him sometimes, Mr. Leonard, how he used to sit right here watching everything. I didn't understand it then, but I get it now." "He was looking for something worth believing in," Zara said, "and he found it." Angela reached across and squeezed Zara's hand. "We're all so proud of you." As they left the cafe, Eli skipping ahead, Zara paused at the door and looked back one last time. She could almost see Leonard sitting there, his newspaper spread out, his coffee steaming, his kind eyes watching her with that knowing smile. "Thank you," she thought, "for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself." The grand reopening of the flagship Monarch and Pine was scheduled for a Friday evening in late spring. Zara had overseen a complete renovation, not just cosmetic changes, but a reimagining of what the restaurant could be. The kitchen was expanded and updated with state-of-the-art equipment. A staff break room was added with comfortable seating and natural light. The dining room maintained its elegance, but felt warmer, more welcoming. Most importantly, the menu now listed the names of the kitchen staff who'd created each dish, giving credit where it was due. The evening of the reopening, Zara stood outside the entrance watching guests arrive. Investors, media, city officials, and restaurant industry leaders filled the space. But Zara had made sure the guest list also included every employee from every location who wanted to attend, with their families. Dana appeared at her side, radiant in a midnight blue gown. "You ready for this?" "More than ready," Zara said. Victoria arrived in a vintage Rolls-Royce, stepping out with the grace of old Hollywood. She embraced Zara warmly. Leonard would be beside himself with joy seeing this. I wish he could be here, Zara said softly. He is, Victoria said. In every choice you make, every person you help. That's immortality. Inside, the restaurant gleamed. Soft jazz played, glasses clinked, laughter filled the air. Carmen had orchestrated the evening perfectly, and the kitchen staff moved with practiced precision. When it was time for speeches, Richard Aldridge spoke first, praising Zara's leadership and the company's transformation. Helen Marks followed, announcing that she was increasing her investment significantly because she believed in the company's future. Then it was Zara's turn. She stood at the podium with Eli beside her. She'd decided he should be part of this moment. He held her hand, looking up at her with complete trust. A year ago, Zara began, I was a waitress working double shifts to make ends meet. I had no idea that the kind old man at table 7 was about to change my life. Leonard Grayson gave me an incredible gift, but it wasn't just his company. It was his belief that kindness matters, that people matter, that success isn't measured only in profit, but in the lives we touch and the dignity we protect. She looked around the room at faces she'd come to know, employees who'd become friends, investors who'd become allies, strangers who'd become family. This restaurant, this company, isn't mine alone. It belongs to every person who cooks a meal, serves a table, washes a dish. It belongs to everyone who believes that work should provide not just a paycheck, but respect, opportunity, and hope. Tonight, we're not just celebrating a renovation. We're celebrating a revolution in how we treat each other. The applause was thunderous. Eli tugged on her hand and she bent down. He whispered something in her ear and she smiled. My son wants to say something, Zara announced. Eli stepped up to the microphone, which had to be lowered to his height. He looked out at the crowd with the fearlessness of a 6-year-old. My mommy is the best, he said simply. She works really hard, and she's really nice to people, and I'm proud of her. The room erupted in applause and more than a few tears. As the evening continued, Zara made her way through the crowd, thanking people, listening to stories, soaking in the moment. She found Sienna near the kitchen, now wearing a junior sous chef's coat. This is because of you, Sienna said, gesturing to her uniform. I start culinary school full-time next month. This is because of you, Zara corrected. You did the work. I just opened the door. Near midnight, as the last guest departed, Zara stood alone in the empty dining room. The staff had cleaned up with remarkable efficiency, and the space was peaceful, candlelight flickering on the tables. Dana found her there. You okay? More than okay, Zara said. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. You've earned it, Dana said. Everything you've built, everything you've changed, you've earned all of it. Zara thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the doubt, the battles fought and won. She thought about Eleanor's apology, Trevor's defeat, the company transformed. She thought about Leonard's faith in her and how she'd struggled to believe she deserved it. But standing here now, in this space that represented everything she'd fought for, she finally understood. She deserved it all along. Not because she was perfect or brilliant or born into privilege, but because she'd cared when it would have been easier not to. Because she'd chosen kindness when cynicism was safer. Because she'd fought for dignity when others saw only profit. Come on, Dana said, linking her arm through Zara's. Let's go home. They walked out into the spring night, the city alive with possibility around them. 6 months later, Zara stood at the podium during the annual shareholders meeting and announced record profits, not achieved through exploitation, but through excellence. The company had become an industry leader in employee satisfaction, customer loyalty, and sustainable growth. More locations opened, each one reflecting the values Leonard had cherished and Zara had fought to preserve. The company launched a foundation providing scholarships for hospitality workers pursuing education. Zara established mentorship programs connecting experienced employees with those just starting their careers. And at every location, at every restaurant, there was a small plaque near the entrance with a simple inscription. In memory of Leonard Grayson, who believed that how we treat people matters more than how much we earn. This company honors his legacy by honoring every person who walks through these doors, as a guest and as family. Zara never forgot where she came from. She visited restaurants regularly, not as an executive conducting inspections, but as someone genuinely interested in people's lives. She knew the names of dishwashers and line cooks, hosts and servers. She remembered birthdays, asked about children, celebrated promotions, because she understood something that Eleanor and Trevor never had. True power wasn't about domination or control. It was about lifting others up, about creating opportunities, about seeing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their position. On the one-year anniversary of Leonard's death, Zara visited his grave. It was a simple headstone in a peaceful cemetery overlooking Puget Sound. She brought fresh flowers and sat on the grass beside it, Eli playing nearby. "I hope I made you proud," she said softly. "I hope this is what you wanted." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of cedar and salt water. "I think about you all the time," she continued. "Every decision I make, I ask myself what you would do. And usually, the answer is simple. Choose kindness. Choose integrity. Choose people." Eli ran over, holding a dandelion he'd picked. "Can I give this to Mr. Leonard?" "Of course, sweetheart." Eli placed the dandelion carefully on the grave. "Thank you for helping my mommy," he said solemnly. As they walked back to the car, Eli slipped his hand into hers. "Mommy, are you still sad about Mr. Leonard?" "Sometimes," Zara admitted, "but mostly I'm grateful. He gave us a chance at a better life." "Did we use it good?" Zara smiled, squeezing his hand. "Yeah, baby, I think we did." Years would pass. Eli would grow up, eventually joining the company himself and carrying forward the legacy of compassion and excellence. The company would continue to thrive, expanding thoughtfully, always putting people first. Zara would become a respected voice in the industry, speaking at conferences, mentoring other leaders, proving that success and ethics weren't opposing forces. But the moment that defined everything, the moment she would always return to, was that morning at Café Aurora when 5 men in black suits walked through the door and changed her life forever. She'd been a waitress who cut toast for an old man because it was the right thing to do. And that simple act of kindness had transformed everything. People still underestimated her sometimes. They saw her humble beginnings and assumed she'd gotten lucky. They didn't understand that luck had nothing to do with it. She'd worked for everything she had. She'd fought for every victory. She'd earned her place at the table, not through manipulation or deceit, but through the radical act of treating people with dignity. And in the end, that made all the difference. The empire built on compassion stood stronger than any built on greed ever could. And Zara Mitchell, the waitress who inherited everything, had proven that the greatest revolution wasn't about taking power. It was about using power to serve others. That was Leonard's gift to her. And it was the gift she would spend the rest of her life paying forward.